Welcome back. Last week I introduced the voltage framework, the idea that your body is fundamentally an electromagnetic being and that cellular voltage may be foundational to both physical health and your capacity to perceive signal from your own body, which relates to intuition and other psychic abilities. Today we're starting the practical work and you're going to hear an explanation for grounding that you may not have heard before. At any rate, there are 8 practices that support voltage, and we're going through them one at a time across this series. Today is the first, grounding. And I'm going to tell you what grounding is, what the research shows, how to do it properly, what to expect over time, and why most people resist this despite it being practically free. Let me start with what grounding actually is mechanically. The Earth has a slight negative charge. This is established physics. The surface of the Earth holds a negative charge relative to the atmosphere above it, which is why lightning works the way it does. The charge differential equalizes through the air during storms. Your body, when it's not in direct contact with the Earth, accumulates positive charge over time. This happens through metabolism, inflammation, stress, ordinary cellular activity that produces what we call reactive oxygen species. These are positively charged molecules that contribute to oxidative damage and inflammation. But when your skin makes direct contact with the Earth, barefoot on grass, dirt, or unsealed concrete, electrons transfer from the Earth into your body. The negative charges from the Earth neutralize some of the positive charges accumulated in your tissue. So this isn't mystical. It is straightforward electrochemistry. 2 surfaces with different charges brought into contact equalize through electron transfer. The Earth has more electrons than your body, so your body absorbs some of them. The interesting question is what those electrons do once they're in your body. The research suggests they function as biological antioxidants. They neutralize the reactive oxygen species that drive inflammation and cellular damage. They support what's called Zeta potential, the electrical charge on the surface of your red blood cells that keep them properly separated and flowing well. So let me talk about what the research actually shows because this matters. There are now published studies on grounding in peer-reviewed journals. The work isn't conclusive in the way that some practitioners present it, but it's also not nothing. Studies have shown that grounding produces measurable changes in inflammation markers. Specifically, C-reactive protein and other inflammatory indicators decrease with regular grounding practice. The effect size isn't enormous, but it's consistent across multiple studies. Other research has shown effects on sleep quality and cortisol patterns. The cortisol research is interesting. Chronic stress, which I have experienced as well as many of you, flattens the natural cortisol curve, where cortisol should be high in the morning and low at night. And I did experience that, and that does interrupt your sleep pattern in a big way. Grounding seems to help restore the natural pattern in some people, including me. Blood viscosity research has been some of the most striking of studies. Studies there have showed that grounding improves Zeta potential. I'm really big on Zeta potential. There's more on that later in this series. The negative charge on red blood cells that keep them separated and flowing well. When Zeta potential is good, blood flows smoothly through the capillaries. When Zeta potential drops, cells clump together and microcirculation suffers. Also, blood pressure can suffer. There's also research on wound healing and on muscle recovery after exercise. Both show benefits from grounding practice. The skeptical response to this research often points out that the effect sizes are modest, the studies are small, and some of the researchers are also selling grounding products. These are reasonable concerns, but the research isn't bulletproof, but what research is, right? But the underlying mechanism is so simple, electron transfer between surfaces, that it would be more surprising if grounding had no effect at all than if it had modest effects that the research is suggesting. So let's talk about how you actually ground. The basic practice is simple. Direct skin contact with the earth. Bare feet are the easiest entry point. Hands work too if you're sitting on the ground, gardening, or just resting your palms on grass. The surfaces that work: grass, dirt, sand, unsealed concrete, natural stone in concrete with earth, natural stone in contact with the earth, and also salt water. Any of these allow electron transfer. So if you go to the beach and you're standing in the sand but also in the water, that's a really big boost in terms of electron transfer. The surfaces that don't work are asphalt, wood decking, sealed concrete, painted surfaces, indoor floors. These are insulators that block the electron transfer. 20 minutes a day is typical recommendation. Longer is fine. Shorter is still beneficial, but less so. The body seems to absorb electrons until it reaches equilibrium with its Earth's charge. So additional time beyond that doesn't produce additional effect in any given session. So time of day doesn't strictly matter, but combining grounding with morning sun exposure, you can stack 2 voltage supporting practices into one outdoor session. 20 minutes barefoot on grass in the morning, ideally with sunlight on your skin, and you get 2 interventions at once. Weather matters less than people think. Cold weather grounding is uncomfortable, but it still works. Wet ground actually conducts better than dry ground because water helps the electron transfer, thus the beach example I gave you earlier. If you can't easily go outside, you're living in a city, you've got mobility issues, or there's severe weather, there are grounding products. Sheets that connect to the grounding pin of an electrical outlet, mats for under your desk, patches that adhere to skin, pillowcases, shoes. I've got the shoes. These work by connecting you to the earth through the grounding wire of your electrical system. The research suggests they produce similar effects to direct earth contact, though some people argue, me included, that direct contact is better. So what can you expect from a consistent grounding practice? In the first few days, some people notice almost immediate effects. Better sleep that first night, a sense of being calmer, reduced inflammation or pain. These early responders tend to be people whose systems were significantly depleted of electrons, and the rapid replenishment produces noticeable change. So most people don't have such immediate response. The effects build over weeks of consistent practice, so don't give up. After 2 or 3 weeks of daily grounding, common reports include better sleep quality, reduced background inflammation, improved energy, calmer nervous system states. The effect compounds rather than appears suddenly. People with chronic inflammatory conditions can often see the most benefit. That's things like arthritis, autoimmune conditions, chronic pain, post-injury recovery. The anti-inflammatory effects of grounding seem to be more pronounced when there's more inflammation to address. This is something I see over healing modalities, by the way. The worse it is, almost the faster it responds. Some people don't notice much, and this isn't necessarily because the grounding isn't working. It's the effects might be operating below their threshold of awareness, supporting their voltage in ways they can't directly feel. Just like you don't feel your blood pressure being adequate until it isn't, you may not feel your cellular voltage being supported either. The support is happening though, either way. Now, let me talk about resistance because this is important. Grounding is free unless you want to buy some of the products, and some of those are very easy entry. They're inexpensive, some are much more expensive, but you don't need the super high priced things. The research supports this, so there's no reason not to do it. The mechanism is simple physics. So it's not woo, okay? It's not out there, it's not edge science. It takes 20 minutes a day and it produces measurable effects on multiple health markers. Most people who hear about it don't do it. The barriers are real, but they're mostly small. Some people don't have easy access to unsealed ground. Some live in cold climates where outdoor barefoot time isn't comfortable much of the year. Some live in cities with limited green space. Some feel self-conscious about being barefoot outside in their neighborhood. Some have foot problems that make barefoot walking uncomfortable. But for most people, the barriers are smaller than they admit. The lawn is there, the park is nearby, the yard is grassy. The barrier is more often something else, which can be discomfort with the unfamiliarity of standing barefoot on grass for 20 minutes. The cultural conditioning that says shoes and protected feet are how civilized people are. the sense that something this simple can't really matter. And that's an important one. That is a big one for people. This is too easy, it can't work. I want to name this resistance because overcoming it is the practice. If you can find a way to be barefoot on the earth for 20 minutes daily, you have cleared the main barrier. The rest is just doing it. For people who garden, grounding is essentially built in. If you spend time working in the soil, your hands and often your knees are in direct contact with the earth. You're grounding without calling it grounding. This is part of why people who garden, which is me, often report feeling better than people who don't, beyond the obvious benefits of being outside and moving. For my own practice, I do this sometimes with my morning tea. I'll take my tea outside and stand barefoot on the grass while the sun comes up. And I'm usually looking around, harvesting some berries, harvesting vegetables that we have, picking some weeds now and then. Not super, strenuous anything, just kind of walking through the yard, appreciating what's there. This stacks morning sunlight with grounding and gets me outside before the day pulls me into other activities. And it creates a consistent ritual that I do almost daily. Now, I have 3 forested acres, so my grounding access is generous. But you don't need acres. A patch of grass behind your apartment building works. A park bench you can take your shoes off near works. The threshold's low. In the winter, when the ground is frozen or covered in snow, I will shift. Okay, so here is where my shoes come in contact. So I have grounding shoes that have a copper kind of nugget in them. And then I will go out on the concrete, on the grass with those shoes. If I'm running errands, still works, right? But I will also kind of stack this with a mat underneath my desk, which I also have low barrier to entry. And I have a grounding pillowcase. But I'll be honest with that one, I'm not very fond of it. I don't like the way it feels. But, this cold weather doesn't mean you have to stop. So practical recommendations to start this week. Tomorrow morning, take your coffee or tea outside. Take off your shoes, stand or sit on grass for 20 minutes. Do this barefoot in direct contact. Notice what happens in your body across those 20 minutes. I'm always talking to you about signal and interoception. Tune in. You may not notice anything specific, and that's fine. The work is being done at the level of cellular charge, not always at the level of conscious sensation. Do this every day for 2 weeks. Track in your awareness, not necessarily a journal, just in your sense of yourself, how you feel after 2 weeks of this versus how you feel now. If you find effects, you have evidence the practice works for you. If you don't, you spend at least 20 minutes outside daily for 2 weeks, which has its own benefits. This is the most accessible voltage intervention available. Costs nothing, requires no equipment. It doesn't even require time you don't have. You can still drink your coffee or read or be present while you do it. If you do nothing else from this entire voltage series, do this one. Next week, we're going to cover light, sunlight specifically, and the role of red and near-infrared frequencies in supporting cellular voltage. The light story is one of the most interesting in this whole framework. But for now, grounding. 20 minutes daily, barefoot on the earth, starting tomorrow. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.